All right, good morning and welcome to the Wednesday morning edition, July 27th, 2022. Sidelines, Rob Brown along with Jimmy Hodge, and got a great lineup today. Start off with Mr. College Football, Tony Barnhart. Second segment, Dan Mathews, executive producer, Southern Sports Today with Chuck Oliver in Atlanta. Also Chuck and Chernoff on 680. In the third segment, top of the second hour, Johnny Ballpark Franks will join us from Nashville. This is one of the better interviewers, better minds in sports. His Heisman Trophy recipient interviews are just absolute solid gold. In the fourth segment, we'll go up to Washington and check in with Michael Gittens of the War Rapport. So remember, we're going to be here with you as we are every Monday through Saturday, 8 to 10 a.m. Central, 9 to 11 a.m. east of the Chattahoochee, the Johns River, down in Jacksonville. And we are going to be on 680thefan.com, the podcast park. Right after this show, we go there. So a couple of things real quick. Our sponsors, great folks. We're broadcasting live from Red River Ford Toyota here in Wynne, Arkansas. Best values on cars, trucks, and SUVs on the trade-ins probably in the last 20 years. Check them out. They deliver anywhere. And let's get started right now and go straight to it. We've got Tony Barnhart on with us over in Atlanta. And Tony, saw you. You were a very, very busy man. You were like the top student in the class there in that main media room. You would get up and say hello, but you're focused, what I call true grit journalism. And we had one of the funnest shows Saturday. We had Kevin Skarbinski on, and he blended in with Philip Marshall, who blended in with Buddy Martin. So let's just say it was a round table of real sports writers, and they were telling some of the funniest stories I've ever heard about when Elmore Scoop Hudgens was going to write a book about the Skywriters tour, and they were at a party, and Buddy goes, "We were just trying to raise enough money to keep him from writing the book."
Well, that's the great thing about I get asked a lot about the old Skywriters tour because I missed it when they were just winding down when I got to Atlanta in '84. But as they told me, well, the good news about the Skywriters tour is most of the things that happen, the statute of limitations has run out on them. So that's
yeah, that is correct. But I got to tell you, SEC Media Days in Atlanta, I thought the event was first class, and we got a chance to have Kimberly Bowden, the CEO of the College Football Hall of Fame, on the show Wednesday. And I told her, I said, I just want you to know, and I don't know if you hear it from people, but how much we appreciate what you and your staff did. Everybody there Atlanta goes the extra mile putting on a big event, and it's a tribute to everybody there. They make you feel like you matter. So I thought it was a great event, and it's great to see you and so many people from around the country, because it means we're going to be talking about football, and tradition, as Haywood Harris once said, never graduates, does it?
That's exactly right. Well, and it's a different vibe when you have it when you have the SEC Media Days in Atlanta. I mean, you're surrounded by all of this football history, and it feels more like an NFL draft, big time event. The folks in Birmingham at the Winfrey Hotel, Winfrey's fine. It does what it's supposed to do, but it just has a completely different feel when you do it in Atlanta.
It really does. And I thought that it starts so fast and it's over before you know it. 14 coaches in 4 days, 42 student athletes, but starts off with the keynote address by Commissioner Sankey. What were your biggest takeaways from those 4 days? Things maybe you didn't know or that surprised you?
Well, first of all, there was very little news that came out, unlike the year before when Texas and OU broke. Right in the middle of SEC Media Days. I thought Commissioner Sankey sort of set the right tone. I got asked a lot by people, well, what's he going to say when he gets up here? Because it's really a state of the conference address is what it is when he's got all the media out there. And basically he said, I said he's going to say two things. He's going to say them a lot more eloquently than I could. So basically he's going to get up there and say, when it comes to expansion, we're good. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it, but we're good. The other thing he was going to say is that it's good to be us. we're in a good shape right now. When you think about the uncertainty that surrounds the ACC and the Big 12 and the Pac-12, SEC is a super league. And that's what he said. And so there weren't any real surprises. Nothing came out of the Jimbo Nick Saban thing, which we didn't think it would. That basically got resolved in Destin. So it was no surprises, but a lot of fun.
Yeah, it really was. And I thought watching SEC Network and all out there, got a chance to talk to Takeo Spikes a couple of times, and that's official. He's on the network now, so
yeah,
it'll be a lot of fun. I love that setup that they have there in the lobby. A lot of fans, and it was when Kirby Smart came, Dog fans, hey, look, they should be excited, and Nick Saban, but every fan base was represented there. That's the great thing about Atlanta. It's got some of everybody's fans, and it's typically the largest alumni base out of state for every school. And so that makes it special. The fact that there wasn't a whole lot of news to come out of there, it was good. And something I noticed, you didn't hear a lot of NIL and portal talk, and the players, the student athletes that were there, Tony, I thought they were impressive. They were talking about football. I mean, if someone asked them an NIL question, they were, but that's what, and you know what? I think the free market is just going to work all this stuff out. And we had, interestingly, I'm seeing that the Mike Leach plan a week ago Saturday, Stuart Carter, Stat Tiger, was on our show. He brought up an idea, I guess it was July 16th, about having a draft out of high school, similar to what they do in the NFL. And I'm not, I haven't read Mike Leach's whole plan, but I've known Stuart a while. But, something's going to happen, because we had Kent Stevens, the historian of the College Football Hall of Fame, on the show yesterday. And I said, what year was it? 1905 or 06? He said, yeah, there were 19 players killed. And we've talked about it before. We almost lost football in Georgia. And you look where we are all these years later. Those lives, that was tragic that they were lost. But we always do things to work through and navigate. But what do you think the next move will be to get – I think the best thing will be just to play some football games.
Well, I've said this to a lot of people, is that while these things are hot topics now, NIL, et cetera, transfer portal, it's because we don't have any games. And people get all worried about NIL. And look, once the games start, the fans are not going to care. The fans are not going to care who got what money, where did it come from. They're going to concentrate on the games. The NIL situation is one that's going to, quite honestly, it's probably going to take several years to put together, because you got to get too many people to say yes to get things done, and that's hard to do. But again, it's talking season, as Coach Purdy always said.
Yeah,
and we'll talk about it. But once the game starts, people are not going to be talking about it.
Yeah, and as Larry Munson always would say to Lauren, quickly, Jimmy, jump in this conversation. Tony, we started StreamYard now on video, so next time you're on, if you want to join us on the video link, we'd love to have you. I've been watching you on CSS and CBS college football for a long time, but this is where we're getting to closer and closer. I think Monday is when practice starts. But Jimmy, come on in.
Yeah, Tony, you've been to so many of these SEC media days, and I just wanted to kind of get your take on maybe what you considered the highlights of the week. And of course, this is the first media days we've had after a full season of NIL and transfer portal developments. And one thing that kind of surprised me is that publicly every coach made a statement about how they feel that it's really good for players to be able to get compensated and get paid and that type of thing. But we all know deep down there's a lot about this that they don't like. But what were some of the highlights or things that stood out in your mind during the week?
Well, understand from what a coach is going through with all this NIL stuff, the last thing he's going to do is go out in front of the media and say, well, I don't really like this NIL thing. I don't think the players should be getting paid. That's not what coaches are not going to do that. They're going to support the players 100%. What the coaches are concerned about is there are no guardrails. There are no rules. There's no structure. I mean, coaches are creatures of habit. Coaches say, just tell me what the rules are, okay? And then I will figure out a way to operate within the rules. But in this case, there are no rules. So every coach basically said the same thing. I support the players and their ability to generate income, but somehow, some way, we got to have some structure. And the problem is that part of it is very complicated. You can't just impose a salary cap, because guess what? You'll wind up in court, and we know how that's going to end. Yeah. It was that was a big part of the week, and the other ones is can anybody keep Alabama and Georgia from meeting for the SEC championship on December 3rd? And quite honestly, when I was done with the week, the answer to that is no. Yeah. I don't see any team that's going to keep Alabama and Georgia from playing again.
Yeah. Tony, the next question is Shane Beamer. He's a very passionate coach. He talked about going upstairs and seeing the exhibit about his dad, Frank Beamer, who built Virginia Tech's program up to a national power program. What about South Carolina? You know that landscape very well. It's one of those rare cases where the university of the state has won championship in 130 years of college football. They won co-champions, I think, of the ACC in 1969 with a 7-4 record. But Steve Spurrier took them to 3 straight 11-win seasons, 11, 12, and 13. I go back, and then Clemson has won 21 ACC championships, 3 national championships. Is that something that South Carolina, what do you think it is that keeps them from being? Typically, you'll see the University of is the dominant program in any state. Right.
Well, Clemson's got a history that goes all the way back to Frank Howard and even beyond. And so they've got some history to build on. They have played in the ACC, a little more difficult than playing in the SEC. But here's the thing with South Carolina. It can be done. Coach Spurrier showed that it can be done. Lou Holt showed that it can be done. And the key, as always, is recruiting. When South Carolina's been good, go back and look at their rosters.
Yeah.
They were able to get the star players in the state, Stephon Gilmore, Marcus Lattimore,
Jadeveon Clowney.
On and on. Jadeveon Clowney, on and on and on. During the stretch when Coach Spurrier was there, Shane Beamer, by the way, was a big part of his recruiting operation, was basically running the recruiting operation, and they were getting the elite players out of the state of South Carolina. Yeah. Now Clemson, because of what they've done and Dabo Swinney's done, they're doing that. So that is the key. I thought South Carolina had a wonderful season in Shane Beamer's first year there. They got to a bowl. They won the bowl. They just manhandled the Gators, which was a very impressive win for them. And so Shane Beamer will be the first to tell you, if that's all good, that's a good start. Appreciate it. Now let's go recruit. And that's, and now you've got Spencer Rattler coming in at quarterback, certainly one of the most athletic quarterbacks they've ever had at South Carolina. So if I'm a South Carolina fan, I feel pretty good about the future.
I do too. And you heard what, Shane Beamer said. He goes, I've been to Gamecock events all over the state, all over the South, and every one of them is sold out, standing room only. Yep. So all this talk about the portal and NIL, again, it goes out the window. It's like a friend of mine in Special Forces told me one time. He said, we do all kind of planning, but once the first bullets start flying, everything goes out the window. It's just, so it's a crazy world, but you cannot help but like Shane Beamer, because Tony, my brother-in-law, is about your age. He played college football at Virginia Tech, and I was in Washington interning winter quarter of 87, and I was up there when Beamer was announced as the coach. Man, when you grow up around a dad, Frank Beamer. I mean, when you grow up around, Virginia Tech is like Duke up on top of a mountain. It's a gorgeous campus, and I just think Shane is one of those guys like Lane Kiffin with a really high football IQ. And if you don't like Shane, it's like not liking Andy Griffith or Otis.
Well, I've known him since he was a little boy carrying around his dad's headset during the game. He has grown up. He has worked for a lot of really good coaches.
Yeah.
Bobby Bowden from on. Worked at Tennessee, worked at Mississippi State for Sylvester Croom. And obviously great influence from his dad.
Yeah.
And so I feel pretty here. But here's the issue I tell my South Carolina friends. you're doing all the right things. You've done their facilities their football operations building is just incredible. I've been through it several times, but what you have to remember is that Georgia and Tennessee and Florida are still giving scholarships. Okay,
that's right.
They're not going to quit giving scholarships. So it is you can have the number 10 recruiting class in the country and finish 5th or 6th in the SEC. That's the issue.
Yeah, that's it. And I like the fact, what's great about you, Tony, is that these coaches. You've done the work. I mean, you go on up to Blacksburg and Tobacco Road and the ACC, SEC country. That mixture over there, no matter what, is as high as Georgia and Alabama are ranked, and everybody assumes they're going to play again in Atlanta. Football and the passion of the fans is so local. Everybody thinks they've got the best, and that's what makes college football the greatest game of all time. I absolutely love what you just said about the story of Shane Beamer. And Jimmy, you think about a kid, I say a kid, growing up like that. I mean, I'm older than he is, but that doesn't mean anything. But I think he does have a very high football IQ, and he's rolling the dice, taking a quarterback that transferred like anybody would be. But something makes me think that this guy will have long-term success, and I think they'll stick with him at South Carolina.
Well, as Tony said, he's been around a lot of great coaches, and I just wanted to get an idea of where Tony sees the Eastern Division going well as of now. I mean, it could be pods by next year, the year after, or whatever. But as we sit today, we still have the East and the West, and it just seems like in the last couple of years, we've really had some positive developments at Kentucky. I mean, Mark Stoops, it's been a 10-year slog, but he has done a great job of establishing Kentucky up front as really strong, because we all know this is a line of scrimmage league. And Kentucky had, I think, 3 offensive linemen drafted, and he's just done a marvelous job there. And we all feel that Kentucky obviously is on the upswing, and Tennessee surprised everybody last year, especially with their offense. They established all kinds of school records last year. And we know in this age of college football, if you can score points, you're a threat to win any ball game, especially if your opponent isn't playing their A game. And then there seems to be a really positive vibe about Billy Napier. We know what a great job he did at Louisiana. He's part of the Saban coaching tree and all that. But it just seems like these Eastern Division schools they're on the rise, and they have confidence that they're going to be really competitive, because, hey, if you don't, Georgia's going to make life really miserable for you.
Well, I mean, the way I look at the East is, first of all, take Georgia, put them off to the side. Okay, they're at a different level from a recruiting standpoint and program standpoint. Everybody's chasing Georgia, so put them off to the side. Take Vanderbilt and put them off to the side, because they're not anywhere close to where they need to be to compete for the chance. After that, maybe Missouri you take out. But any of those teams can finish second in the SEC East. You mentioned Kentucky. Mark Stoops in his 10th year. No coach has ever stayed at Kentucky for 10 years. That's the first. He had 10 wins last season. He's got 2 10-win seasons in the last 4 or 5 years there. Kentucky's only got 4 10-win seasons in the history of the school. So he's done a tremendous job there. Tennessee, Hendon Hooker, 31 touchdown passes, 3 interceptions. That is darn near impossible to do, but he did it. Florida, I think they have a chance to have a special player in Anthony Richardson, a quarterback. And if he comes through like they hope he will, then maybe they could challenge. I still think their roster is a little thin right now to finish second, but we'll see. So yeah, it's the East is, after Georgia, the East is pretty much wide open.
Tony, Buddy Martin put out a question. I saw it on Twitter yesterday. It was being asked. I don't know who did it, but about moving the Florida Georgia game out of Jacksonville. Now, I replied, are you going to then say that Leonard Skinner and 38 Special aren't from Jacksonville either? I mean, you just can't do that. But now, as an Auburn graduate, in interest of full disclosure, I think that game being moved away was great for both Auburn and Alabama. But the world's largest outdoor cocktail party, that's a game we've all grown up with, and you've shared a lot of great memories on this show and on the Buddy Martin show, and Lauren Smith has, Mark Slayball. To Georgia people, that is hallowed ground, isn't it? Even though it's across the state line, or is it more of a Florida? Tell me what you think, because you're a Georgia grad, but you're objective and a true pro.
Well, your timing is good because I'm working on a column about that right now.
All right.
That I will file later on this afternoon on my website. Shameless plug, si.com/colleges/TMG. We're under the Sports Illustrated umbrella. So it's si.com/colleges/TMG. That stands for the media guys. And basically, I talked to some people yesterday, and I don't know how to, any other way to say it. I am not in favor of moving the game out of Jacksonville. I've got 3 of my fraternity brothers and I have gone down there to see each other. It's the only time we get together all year long. One's in Colorado Springs, one's in Ringgold, Georgia, up by the Tennessee line. One's in Albany, Georgia, and South Georgia, and I'm in Atlanta. We know every year we're going to get together in Jacksonville, and frankly, we have a good time. We tailgate. We may or may not go to the game. We don't know. We're just having too good of a time. It's too much. It's such an incredible tradition. Now, I am smart enough I've done this long enough to read the tea leaves. And right now, Kirby Smart has more power at the University of Georgia than he's ever had. And he's been clear about wanting to move the game. He's been very consistent about it. And why he wants to move the game, because of the recruiting aspect. He misses out on the recruiting weekend for Georgia's biggest game is against Florida. There's no getting around that. That game is played in Jacksonville. You cannot take recruits to a neutral site game. So his point last week was when Auburn and Alabama played, one of them is the home team, and that team gets to host recruits for the biggest game of the year. So I understand where Kirby Smart's coming from. I just think overall the fans have been asked to give up a lot when it comes to tradition, and I respect Kirby Smart tremendously. I just simply disagree with the decision.
Yeah.
If that ends up being the decision.
Yeah.
But he made it clear last week talking to Tim Tebow. Raised the issue in a conversation, and Kirby was very adamant about that. And again, if I was the head coach of Georgia, I'm certain I'd feel the same way. But I'm not the head coach of Georgia, and I just know a lot of people who build their fall around that trip to Jacksonville.
Yeah, Jekyll Island, St. Simon's, Flagler Beach. I mean, it's just an incredible. I talked to so many Florida and Georgia people, and it's sacred to them. But you're right. You're reading the tea leaves. Kirby Smart is the most powerful coach in Georgia, ever. Right? It seems like right now with the momentum, the recruiting, everything. I hope they keep it there. Just like I hope they keep the Red River rivalry at the Texas State Fair in Dallas, Oklahoma, and Texas when they come into the SEC. Hope they don't make that a home and home. But again, I'm not being a hypocrite because I wanted Auburn and Alabama to move. But as Coach Dye used to say, well, you're going to call that a neutral game, people parking you in the parking lot and people selling you Cokes and hot dogs or wearing Alabama hats. He goes, I don't necessarily think that's too neutral. But, I still, though, Tony, when I drive through Birmingham, which is a lot on I-65, and I look at the old gray lady over there, I just my stomach comes up into my throat thinking about Van Tiffin's field goal in 1985, Bo over the top. I mean, a lot of memories, just like you have with Jacksonville. So that was a great, and I agree with what you said. We'll see what happens. Jimmy?
Yeah, Tony, how long does the current contract last in Jacksonville, and how do you think this turns out? Does Kirby use his leverage to kind of get his way on this, or is it a board of trustees that really gets involved on this along with the administration? Or, how do you see this working out? And is there any real way of knowing?
Well, first of all, the current contract goes through 2023 with a 2-year option, where both schools agree. The head football coach doesn't make the decision here. It'll be the president, Jerry Moorhead, and the athletic director, Josh Brooks, will ultimately make the decision. But let's face it, if you're the president and you're the athletic director, you really want to keep your football coach happy. And they have done a lot. Kirby Smart was very clear about what he thought Georgia needed from a facility standpoint when he took over the job, and they've done just about everything he's asked for. So it's going to be an interesting decision. Now, always factor this in. Many times, Georgia has said, "Well, we're leaving," but you know what? The mayor of Jacksonville, and understand, the mayor of Jacksonville is. And their sports authority runs that game. And somehow the bid for the next contract would go up significantly before the final decision was made. So we'll see. Are they doing it? Will they make a change to help Coach Smart in recruiting, or will they stay where they are because they got a nice, sweet financial deal from the city of Jacksonville?
Yeah, and I think he also mentioned the fact that during media days, during an interview, that he wanted all the season ticket holders, or at least 90% of the stadium on odd number of years to be able to see Florida in Athens. And of course, we know they had the home and home 20 years ago when they were renovating the Gator Bowl. And do you recall what maybe the vibe was back then, and what the feeling was among the fan base when they did have the home and home? I know Georgia was down back then, during the latter part of the Goff years, but it's just a magical game, and there have been so many legendary moments. I know a lot of Georgia fans kind of feel like, hey, even though it's 50-50 in the stadium, it's like we're the road team, we're playing in enemy territory. And then the other segments of fans say, hey, man, this is just an awesome event every year. It's just the highlight of every football season. We love doing this. And it's what's the divide between the Georgia fans on this 50-50, or do most really like playing in Jacksonville, or does it depend on if you're on a big winning streak in this series or not?
All right. Well, the Georgia fans I talked to, 1994 was the year that Georgia played at Gainesville, and that was a very ugly game for Georgia. I talked to some Georgia people yesterday, some close friends. They said, Barnhart, you know how we feel about Jacksonville, because we like it in Jacksonville, and we don't ever want to go back to Gainesville. that guy wanted to stadium was ugly. We don't ever want to go back there.
Yeah.
I think again, guys, what's going to happen is this whole argument's going to break down around generational lines. Folks, people of a certain age, like me and my fraternity brothers, who've been going for 35 years, we look at it one way, because we've grown up with the tradition of going to Jacksonville every year. The younger, I hate to sound like a get off my lawn guy, but the younger generation, they don't have that background. Okay, they just hear their football coach saying, "Hey, this gives us an addition," as if Georgia wasn't already doing well in recruiting. This gives them the home feel for their biggest game of the year, and I can understand that. So it'll be interesting to see how it all unfolds, because the president, of course, and the athletic director are going to hear from, here's the one thing about the older folks. The older folks give money. Okay, the older folks make donations for those season tickets. The younger folks are just getting in position to where they can financially help the university.
Yeah.
So I think that's a factor as as well.
Yeah. Tony, listen, I appreciate your time. I know you've got to get going, and love having you on here. Look forward to our next visit. Tell people how they can follow you and read this column that you're about to put out, because it is must-read material.
Yeah, our website is TMG College Sports, and as I mentioned, we are under the Sports Illustrated umbrella. So you go to si.com/colleges/TMG. And Mark Blaushin, 30-year veteran of the Boston Globe, Herb Gould, 25-year veteran of the Chicago Sun-Times. I was with the Atlanta Journal-Constitution for 25 years, and we sort of cover, as they say, we sort of span the globe, giving you college football coverage. And our plan now, we're working on this right now, we're going to add a podcast to our website a little bit later this summer. So I would ask folks to go on and check it out.
Hey, absolutely. Tony, thanks so much. Have a great day. We'll be back with Dan Mathews over in Atlanta after this quick commercial break on Sidelines.
Kitchens and bathrooms make a home, and the design teams at Kitchens Unlimited know how to make kitchens and baths. They know it all because they have seen it all. Kitchens Unlimited has been designing and remodeling the Mid-South's kitchens and baths for over 50 years. Check out their showroom at 3550 Summer Avenue or visit them on the web at kitchensunlimited.net.
If you have a crash, dent or ding, go to G.E. Patterson and BB Jeans for Tom Martin's Body Shop.
Come on down to Hewlett & Dunn Boot and Clothing Company, located on Historical Square in Collierville, Tennessee. Hewlett & Dunn is the second largest Filson dealer in the Southeast, stocked with Southern brands you know and trust, and a new inventory arriving all the time. Do yourself or someone you know and love a favor and visit this store. Open Monday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-City exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
As an agricultural producer, no matter where you farm, minimum tillage is a primary concern each and every season. At House Industries in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, we manufacture equipment to help you maximize efficiency when planting and watering a crop. Pieces like the pulverizer, bedder roller, 3-bar do-all, and bed conditioner assist you in optimizing seedbed preparation and ultimately your bottom line. Visit HouseIndustriesInc.com to locate the dealer nearest you.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Brown. Talk sporty to me.
All right, we are back here. Great segment there with Tony Barnhart. A lot of really good insight on what's going on down in Jacksonville, the Florida-Georgia game. Look for his column, TMG, the media guides. And let's also go back to Atlanta again. Our friend Dan Mathews, executive producer of Southern Sports Today, Chuck Oliver, king of college football, which is on every Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. right after this show. And also Chuck and Chernoff on 680 The Fan in Atlanta right after from 3 to 6. Dan, is that correct?
2 to 6.
2 to 6. 2 to 6. Okay, so 4 hours of football, Atlanta Braves and all. We were at the Battery Saturday. Man, I tell you, Brassfield Gorey built that is a cathedral of baseball, Dan. And college football, we had media days last week. I tell you, Chuck was bragging about you. I think you worked 15 hours a day. I mean, what you all did up there on Radio Row was amazing. And that's why people need to be following you and listening to you. What were your takeaways from media days? There's a lot of excitement and all, but we've been asking everybody that was there if you learned anything new, if you were surprised about anything. And then we're talking, it's college football. Practice starts Monday. So we're turning the page on NIL and the portal.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was a lot. I think it was something new every single day. It was the first day of Greg Sankey. Where do things stand with name, image, and likeness, conference realignment, everything of the such. And then, Brian Kelly coming through, who I actually think had a really good first media days. Thought he really handled himself well. I mean, being asked about the goofy start at LSU, I guess, was the first part of it. And then, Tuesday, Nick Saban had his chance and able to come through and, talk about his former assistants and conference realignment, what he thinks it means, and being able to kind of move along that way. And then Wednesday, Kirby Smart had his chance, and then I really kind of think that Kirby Smart had 2 days in Atlanta. I think he had his day, and then he kind of stole the show on Thursday when it was announced the contract extension for him to make him the highest paid college coach.
Yeah, $1 billion over 12 years or something like that. I mean, the numbers are so far out there; they're freakish. But I thought of all the coaches there, I thought Brian Kelly, he was good. He's sizing up the room when he walked in to the electronic media room after he was the first one up on the podium Monday morning. Very relaxed and very smart football coach. I'm with Jimmy. Jimmy, you think he's going to win a couple of national championships at LSU? Hell, Lester Miles did. Coach O did. Coach Saban woke up the sleeping giant that is LSU. But I thought media days, the takeaway from there is who's getting these suits for these guys I saw on TV that don't even come down to their shoes. They're like clam diggers. I mean, but I digress. But I thought it was an awesome event, Dan. And Kimberly Bowden and the College Football Hall of Fame people and the people at the Omni, they get a double thumbs up. It was absolutely fantastic. And they had it like a meat locker in the main media room in there. I think it was 52 degrees in there. There were a lot of people wearing vests and pullovers in there. I'm like, have you been outside? I guess not. But Jimmy, jump in.
Yeah, I thought every head coach really did a good job. Usually there's a couple of instances where the coach feels, let's say, some pressure and knows his, job's on the line. And to that effect, I thought Harsin had a really strong performance. He just looked like a guy that knew what his task was ahead of him, but at the same time, he looked like he was relishing the challenge, and that his players were on board, and he addressed the issues of his job being on the line in that 1 week period earlier this year. And I thought he handled it really well. He addressed it and correctly said, "Hey, we're moving on. That decision's been made." And again, I just thought it was a really strong overall performance by most every coach. And then there were a couple of highlight, I guess, Steelers, and that's always the case with Lane Kiffin. He comes in, doesn't wear a tie, joked about setting a precedent, and talked about Greg Sankey saying, "Yeah, I wish I didn't have to wear a tie." And he basically said, "Well, I've broken the barrier here, Commissioner. Feel free to not wear one going forward, maybe." And then Mike Leach. I mean, how awesome was that? No opening statement, or if you want to call 6 words an opening statement, and he takes questions. I mean, it's just classic. And those two guys are just perfect as like rival coaches in the same state, because we know how in certain cases intense or over the line the rivalry can be. But it's interesting because those two guys have known each other a long time, and they're really good friends.
Dan, I thought one of the funniest things was a writer from Mississippi, I believe, said there are 2 great personalities in the state of Mississippi, Deion Sanders and you. And he went on with the question, and Lane Kiffin just kind of looked at the guy, and he got through, and he said, "Well, actually, there are 3. Don't forget my friend Mike Leach." I thought that was funny because they do have a long history of coaching against one another. But that's pretty neat in an intense rivalry, because that is a really intense rivalry, Ole Miss and Mississippi State.
Yeah, it's pretty neat. It started, really at a time when I think we were all hoping that we would get more of an introduction to it, but COVID kind of robbed us of that. So that was unfortunate. But no, I think that it's a good rivalry. I think it's got everything that you need. I think it's got two very dynamic personalities, but also too, it's a respectful rivalry, because you're not going to have either one of them taking pop shots at each other. If they do, it's all in good fun. It's not going to be personal, and nobody's going to get their feelings hurt. So, I kind of think it's the best of both worlds in that regard. But no, it was a good showing really for everyone. I thought Lane Kiffin, I kind of thought the tenor, and we talked about this last week on the Chuck Oliver show. I think the tenor with him was that it was very much that he's fighting for his survival in terms of talking about name, image, and likeness, and just how it's being used at certain places. And I think his concerns were valid about boosters getting involved, where he's just like, if someone's promised someone playing time, do I have to play that guy? And then also too, just not having any real cap or guardrails on this thing is a concern to him, and I agree, it is. I think that the super haves will be the haves, and the have-nots will be even fewer and further between, and that I think goes against what we really want this to be. I think we want everyone to get paid. I think we want everybody to make a livable salary. Our good buddy Cole Kubelik, he was on with Jake Crane and his crew with Crane and Company, and he brought up the point, Bryce Young makes more money than I do. And he says that's not, a slight at Bryce Young or me saying that he shouldn't, but it's also too, it's showing you that, there's guys that are making serious and really good money at this. That's fine. We want that. I just think that you just don't want this to get out of hand with, again, the super boosters. If a school has somebody that's got very deep pockets and, and can go to a kid and say, hey, we'll give you $1 million if you sign with our university. I think that's something that everybody wants to guard against. And I think that's what he's talking about.
Yeah. We brought that up months ago about you've got the big booster, and he gives $500,000 or $1 million a year to whatever university. And then there's an NIL deal, and you pull that player for bad grades, bad behavior, whatever. That's on the coach. And then there's a conflict going, you better put him back in there. Yeah, Jimmy, turn your ringer off, please, or whoever. Yeah. But that's what's gonna happen. And it's inevitable. And Franz Beard, who's on regularly with us, GatorBaitMedia.com, along with Buddy Martin, Franz wrote a column about a month ago, said we're going to have some of these big NIL deals go bust to get people's attention. But I'll tell you what, Dan, in the business world, you see people move. Sometimes they may get, 6 figures, 7 figures to move from one firm to another. Typically it's a 5-year deal. A year or two in, if they don't like it and they want to leave, they got to pay back that money that they were given up front. Okay. And you watch this NIL deal. I think what's going to blow it all up is the fact that the NCAA passed a rule during last Thursday or Friday, allowing immediate transfer, immediate eligibility as often as you want. You wait until somebody pays a kid a big check and he leaves halfway through the season or at the end of the season. Quinn Ewers last year had a $1.4 million deal at Ohio State, and he didn't do anything except take a couple of handoffs in a game. He left. He's at Texas this week, as far as I know, until something, gets him upset and he crawls and leaves. That's what I mean by the free market. The free market always wins out. And Stat Tiger brought it up on our show July 16th. Stuart Carter, he's proposed this idea of having a draft out of high school. Because how many teams, Dan, I bet you know this, how many different teams have won the Super Bowl in the last 15 years?
No clue. 7, 8,
12. Okay. How many different teams have won the national championship in the last 15 years in college football?
10.
8. So, the point is in the NFL, the more you win, the lower you draft. And then you've got to do trades and free agency and all. in college, the more you win, the better you typically recruit, unless you just don't try. So that's where we're looking at. But what do y'all think? And I'm asking you, Dan, about the Mike Leach proposal. Have you read that?
I have not. No.
About how to fix the game. So I think while publicly coaches say they like NIL and the portal, I think behind the scenes they cuss it, Dan. That's just what I think. All right, looking at Georgia right now, Georgia clearly picked by everybody to win the East, Alabama to win the West. What are potential pitfalls on Georgia's schedule that scare you if you're a Georgia fan?
I mean, I understand everybody's talking about Tennessee and South Carolina. I mean, the good news is you get Tennessee at home. South Carolina, they're going to be up there at Williams-Brice Stadium. So, that could be a little bit of a tough challenge. In terms of what's coming out of the West, I mean, I'm not necessarily thinking that they're too scared about what they're going to have against Auburn or against Mississippi State. And I guess those are the two that they have this year. But I mean, I think that's those are the only games that you look at as be, possible tripping points for them. Missouri's not going to be very good. Vanderbilt's not going to be very good. And, really the rest of the league, I mean, I know that Kentucky is getting a lot of run too, as they should. Mark Stoops has done a really good job there, but I mean, they're going to be challenged. I don't think there's any doubt about that. When you win the national title and you're as good as they've been the last few years, you're going to get people coming after you. And that's what's been the case. So, I mean, I don't expect that to change, but also too, at the same time, I mean, I think it just shows you how talented a roster they are. It's going to be a young but very talented roster. Defensively, especially, you're not going to have the amount of returning players that you had last year, and the talent that you had last year was outstanding. So I do think that they're going to have to be a little bit more offensively savvy than they were last year, and that's being more productive, especially in the passing game. And also too, they're not going to be holding teams as close as they were last year. I mean, that was the largest thing for Georgia, is that, they didn't have to rely necessarily on the offense because the defense was just that good. And I think that this year, kind of like what we saw in the national championship game, you're going to need to see a little bit more out of that from the offense this season. So, I think it's going to be a different team. It's still going to be a really good team. They're still going to win the East. And, and they're going to give themselves every opportunity to be able to win the entire thing as well.
Who were your top three picks for quarterback? I heard Chuck on the Chuck Oliver show yesterday, who his top three were. What were yours?
I think it's pretty much in line. I mean, I'd go Bryce Young first. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I really like Hendon Hooker as well. And, it's not that I'm not a Will Levis fan. I don't necessarily think that, he's got the pieces around him. I mean, he's got Chris Rodriguez. That's huge. I think that those two are up there. It's going to be interesting to see what KJ Jefferson has without his top target this year. So that'll be interesting to see. But, I was a believer in Miles Brennan. I think that he got a really bad rap, when he got his chance to start and had the team had their struggles. I mean, everybody was saying, oh, this team's so much better with Max Johnson. Miles Brennan played really well during the chances that he had to play, but it also at the same time, he hadn't really taken a snap in 2 years. So that's a bit of a concern. So I think that also too, the disrespect for Stetson Bennett is pretty strong. So I'd put Bennett 3, honestly. I mean, how are you going to bet against a guy that was not only a defending national champion, but was also the most outstanding offensive player in both games? Yeah. Both the national championship and the semifinals. So I don't get it. I get it. He doesn't fit a profile, but I thought about this the other day. What I don't really understand with Bennett and the Georgia fan base, wouldn't you think that would be a great story? Like, wouldn't you think that there's people out there, there's people who are teaching their kids the game and everything of, hey, follow your dreams because you can be just like this guy. And yet you still have Georgia fans who are yelling from, the highest places that somebody else should start. And I don't get it. I don't get it. So, you know what the hell? After combing through those names, I'll go with him at number 3.
Well, and before I go back to Jimmy, we've talked about this a lot. And Lauren Smith was on a couple of weeks ago. He's writing the book about Georgia's national championship season, and he visits at least once a week with Kirby Smart. But he went down to Blackshear, Georgia, with Stetson Bennett to just go everywhere where he grew up and all. People down there love him, and you just nailed it. He doesn't fit the profile. People they have these boxes they want to put everybody in. So that's what it is. But as a quarterback goes, he's the leader of the team. He calls the offense. He puts you in a position to win and not in a position to fail. I'm definitely putting Stetson Bennett in my top 3. And you can argue that all day long. But I've said this last year. I told Lauren Smith, I said, Lauren, it's the bedtime story. You read to your kids about perseverance, never quitting, never giving up. You get knocked down, you get back up. You keep fighting. That's Stetson Bennett, man. That guy's the dead gum. He's the American dream. And if you got a guy like that on your team, he's going to make everybody around him better. It's like Takeo Spikes told us on this show about NIL. He goes, I see it as an opportunity because it inspires other people around you to go out and work and get a deal like that. Jimmy?
Yeah, I mean, he was such a key part of this team. And what's so impressive about him was really how he battled back to get where he was. If you'll remember in the 2020 season.
Jimmy, hold on one second. Dan's got to go. Dan, look, let people know how they can follow you and appreciate it. I know you got to get on the air.
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Dan Mathews, ATL1T and Mathews. Follow the show at Chuck Oliver Show on Twitter. Download the Southern Sports Today app. Get us every day, 11 to 1. And I appreciate your time. And got a quick show meeting. I got to get to real quick. So I appreciate it, guys.
You bet. We'll do it again next week. Thanks so much, Dan Mathews.
Right.
Jimmy,
thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Jimmy, sorry about having to interrupt you there. And just so you'll know, Dan and everybody, we've got at the bottom of the screen here, if you're watching on YouTube or Facebook or Twitter, we've got everybody who's on the show, their Twitter address and everything. So it's on the scroll there underneath. And Dan Mathews, you forget, you talk about a tight production schedule, Jimmy. That's why he had to go. I did not see that. And all of a sudden he put it in all caps. I have to go. They're staring at me. So Jimmy, if you would pick back up and make your point, because it was a good one.
No, I just think Stetson Bennett has really come back from a lot of uncertainty within his own coaching staff. I mean, after the Florida game 2 years ago, he got injured on a play in which he threw a touchdown pass to put the Dogs up 2 touchdowns, and he really wasn't effective after that because he was injured. They ended up losing the game. And then 2 or 3 weeks later, JT Daniels got his first start. They felt that he had finally recovered efficiently enough from his knee injury suffered at USC that he was able to go full time at 100%. And he had the huge game against Mississippi State. In fact, that was a shootout against a freshman quarterback at the time, Will Rogers. And the Dogs went on to win, I think, all 4 games that Daniel started. And everybody thought he would be the starter coming into last year. And then he had the labrum issue, and it was a week-to-week a deal on whether he would be able to go. In fact, many times they did not know until pregame warmups on game day if he would be able to play. And in virtually none of those games was he ready to go. And Stetson came in, played great, and just went on and to take Georgia to that magical season. And he played with such confidence, despite the fact that he had so many doubters, which was, very impressive. And then down the stretch, he made all the big plays you had to make. But I would put Will Rogers right up there probably at 3B on that quarterback list because he's in his third year as a starter in the Mike Leach offense. And that offense is designed to put big numbers up. And I look for Rodgers to really have a big season, even though I don't know what State's record will be because they do play in the West. But that offense is going to put up some impressive numbers.
Yeah, and I think that I know our friend Brad Logan has talked a lot about it. Sawyer Pate, one of the quarterbacks there as well. And I'm not sure if he's on the team anymore. But Mike Leach always has a quarterback, develops them. And if the defense is better and they can run the ball 140, 150 yards a game, then they can win a lot of games. But if they don't have the running game and everybody knows what they're going to do, they're going to throw it. But again, if they throw the ball 50 or 60 times a game, it looks at how many impact plays, 15 or more yards do they have? Those are things that they're going to kick in. But I do like, Stetson Bennett, KJ Jefferson, Bryce Young. How can you not? I mean, Bryce Young is so good. It looks effortless. 47 touchdowns last year, very few single-digit interceptions. All the guy does is win. I don't care if he's 5'11", 5'10", 6 foot. Everybody always worries about that. Look at Kyler Murray. I mean, Billy Roberts told me he was standing next to him last year in Atlanta. He goes, he might be 5'8". And he just signed the $250 million contract. So don't tell me Stetson Bennett can't play in the NFL. I mean, he doesn't have that kind of speed, but great quarterbacks don't have to be 6'5", 235 and look like John Elway or Peyton Manning. Nothing against those guys, but a great quarterback is one that wins games for you and puts you in a position to be successful and doesn't lose games because he makes dumb mistakes. Let's take a quick commercial break, and we will be back with Johnny Ballpark Franks in hour number 2. And Jimmy, I'll reboot. Call you right back. Thank you.
Kitchens and bathrooms make a home, and the design teams at Kitchens Unlimited know how to make kitchens and baths. They know it all because they have seen it all. Kitchens Unlimited has been designing and remodeling the Mid-South's kitchens and baths for over 50 years. Check out their showroom at 3550 Summer Avenue or visit them on the web at kitchensunlimited.net.
If you have a crash, dent or ding, go to G.E. Patterson and BB King for Tom Martin's Body Shop.
Come on down to Hewlett & Dunn Boot and Clothing Company, located on Historical Square in Collierville, Tennessee. Hewlett & Dunn is the second largest Filson dealer in the Southeast, stocked with Southern brands you know and trust. And a new inventory arriving all the time. Do yourself or someone you know and love a favor and visit this store. Open Monday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
As an agricultural producer, no matter where you farm, minimum tillage is a primary concern each and every season. At House Industries in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, we manufacture equipment to help you maximize efficiency when planting and watering a crop. Pieces like the pulverizer, bedder roller, 3-bar do-all, and bed conditioner assist you in optimizing seedbed preparation and ultimately your bottom line. Visit HouseIndustriesInc.com to locate the dealer nearest you.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Brown. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Brown back here with you. Hour. Hour number 2 underway here. Johnny Ballpark Franks will be with us here momentarily. That's great stuff with Dan Mathews over there in Atlanta. And he's right. There's still a segment of the Georgia fan base that wants another quarterback. It's all about people have this matrix that they use in recruiting. Quarterback's got to be 6'4", 6'5". Wide receivers got to be 6'3". Running back's got to be 6'1", 223. No. If you look at the top 10 all-time most productive running backs in NFL history, Jimmy, Barry Sanders was 5'8", maybe 5'9". Emmitt Smith, 5'9". I mean, come on. Look at him. Walter Payton. I mean, then you look at Herschel and Bo and Earl Campbell. They were big guys, but, none of them, and some of them injuries like Bo Jackson cut their careers short. But I think what it boils down to is that you can't measure heart, grit, and toughness on a scale. But what you can do is say hello to our good friend Johnny Ballpark Franks up in Nashville. I saw you down at Media Days. It was great to see you, and love the story about Elmore Scoop Hudgens giving you that nickname, Johnny Ballpark Franks. He said, absolutely, go with it. Keep it. Never get rid of it. And, hey, man, tradition and branding never graduate, do they?
No, they don't. Here's the thing. There was a stage there, and as most teenagers go through stages. So I get that nickname when I'm 16. I'm a weekend DJ in Huntsville. I'm running a sports reporting stringing service as a part-time job as I'm going to high school. So I get that nickname. Well, after college, I'm one, there was a stretch there where I was John instead of Johnny for about 5 months. And I thought, on my birth certificate, it's Johnny. Well, so my first real job out of college, I was the media relations director for the Nashville Sounds baseball team. And we were the AAA team for the Reds at the time. And the owner of the team also owned 13 other teams in the Southeast as far as minor league teams were concerned. But he assigned me a mentor, and it was a favor more or less to him. He was retired. He was the original sports information director for Vanderbilt, and he was the first PR director for the Southeastern Conference. His name was Elmore Hudgens, but he went by Scoop Hudgens. And he says, Johnny, nobody will remember the name Johnny Franks, but they will not forget Johnny Ballpark Franks. And so in his honor, I've kept that nickname my entire life. And luckily, in my career, working primarily in sports, working inside sports, covering sports, I've never had to get rid of it.
Hey, look, I remember when I was a TV reporter in Columbus, I went out to Fort Benning to do a story Monday through Friday on Ranger School. And the first day I was out there, they were going, come on, Scoop, you're going to do the road march with us, aren't you? I said, Scoop. And they said, Brown. I was, oh, yeah. I did that road march, and I had on just some thin socks, and I wore some jungle boots. And I think we did a 12-mile road march. I had all the camera gear and everything. I got through. It was June in Fort Benning. I didn't have any skin on the bottom of my feet, and you ought to call me Scrape. But I just think about
this
that.
This is where you need John Wooden, the late head coach of UCLA, because no matter if you were a sophomore, a junior, or a senior, or a freshman, the very first thing, you know what he would do with his upcoming team? First thing he would do is teach them how to put their socks and their shoes on properly to avoid blisters. Yeah. So that's what you needed right there.
Yeah. I thank God for moleskin, and the docs put that stuff on you. That'll keep your feet together. But, Johnny, when I was talking to you down there, these conversations that you have with the Heisman Trophy winners you can't put a value on it, because they're not going to be here forever. You had an opportunity to talk to some more people in Atlanta. Kind of tell us where you stand with that, because those are the best things that I've seen.
For me now, and it's really all started, I'd had Heisman Trophy winners on my show when I was doing a Monday through Friday show, and even my Saturday college game day show. I had Heisman Trophy winners on, and I had at one point or another, maybe 5 of them. And in fact, I've had now 13,000 plus guests, and my very first guest back on April 1st, 2008, when I decided to launch a sports talk show career, my very first guest was the late Pat Sullivan, who was the first Heisman winner from Auburn back in 1971.
Yeah.
But back in 2020, when sports was shut down due to COVID, so in March of that year, I'm thinking, okay, well, what am I going to do to fill 2 to 3 hours a day as far as show content? and with no sports going on to talk about. Well, I started doing featured type interviews. And so I went down my call list and saw, at that point, I've been doing it for 13 years. So, it's easy to start reaching into your bag of tricks and talking to a wide variety of people. But I had noticed going into the weekend, I'd had 4 straight days with a Heisman Trophy winner. And I thought, well, let's have some fun, with this, since sports is shut down anyway, and let's see how long I can keep the streak alive. And fortunately for me, I was able to do it for 5+ weeks. And now we're at the point where I've had over 40 visits with Heisman Trophy winners. I have, I don't know, probably in the neighborhood of 15+ hours of interviews. And just like on Monday, I had Archie Griffin on my show. It was the second time I had Archie on. And so now I'm having the chance and opportunity to go with a lot of these guys for a second, third, fourth visits with these individuals. And I mean, just like yesterday, I just happened to call Gino Torretta, who won from the Hurricanes of Miami back in '92, just to talk, and that's where these relationships are. I added another one last week. First thing off the elevator, I get a 5-minute interview with Bryce Young, for example. I've never had Tim Tebow on, and I was able to have some chats with him, so he's scheduled to come on soon. I'm very, and now it's turned into, well, I know what's out there on the market, and I know what's been done in the past as far as books about the Heisman Trophy and the winners. I'm in the process of doing a comprehensive book on the Heisman Trophy, not just the winners, but also a look at all the top 10 finishers each and every year. Of course, the very first year, there were not top 10. That did not start until the very next year. But I'm in the process of getting that all together. It will include comprehensive stats on their college playing days, their pro days. And so it's been a fun journey for me.
Absolutely. And we're all the better for being able to hear those interviews. Jimmy?
Well, I've been going down the line with a lot of our guests that were at SEC Media Days, and just wanted to ask you the same thing. What did you see as some of the highlights or things that stood out in regard to the different coaches during their appearance, and whether, in their addresses that they said anything maybe that caught your attention, or in the question and answer session, because you never know what's going to happen at that point, because none of that's scripted. You never know what questions are going to be asked, and you never know how the coaches are going to respond to some of those questions, which in some cases are not high quality.
Yes.
Yeah, I got very lucky because, usually in the past I've covered SEC Media Days from Radio Row. And so now that I've got this new format where I stopped doing the 5 days a week shows, I'm just doing a weekly show last year, but especially this year, I'm in the main room. In this case, it was at the College, Football Hall of Fame. And I guess they liked my questions because they kept going to me with all the head coaches on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And in so many ways, starting things off, being the leadoff hitter as far as questions. The winners to me, Brian Harsin really stood out to me in the sense that he has listened. And I don't know if it's tough when you take a new job and there's so many things to do. But I just felt like this off season and everything I'd heard leading into last week, he has done an amazing job of reaching out, having conversations, allowing people to see his personality. And I think that really showed last week when he was addressing the media. He, certainly he addressed what happened in the off season. He kind of got to dig in to let this is not the first go around that boosters at programs tried to get rid of coaches. I mean, and this has happened at Auburn. We go back to the whole trip to get Bobby Petrino while Tommy Tuberville was head coach, and that failed. But I think the biggest thing from Brian Harsin's standpoint was being able to get his message across, show his personality. So to me, that was a big win for him. Now, does that translate to wins on the football field? Time will tell. I don't have them finishing last. I'll say that. I have them actually finishing fourth in the SEC West I have them finishing fourth, followed by Mississippi State, Ole Miss, and LSU. I actually have Auburn going 4-4 in conference play. The one that didn't really stand out to me, and it was he was one of 2 first-year head coaches in the SEC, Billy Napier. Maybe he'll get it, but to me, it was kind of flat, But once again, does that mean that the football team will be flat in 2022? Time will tell. Maybe that's just his personality. But I wanted to, if you're at this, when you're the CEO of a program inside the SEC, we need to see your personality. Now, you can argue that Nick Saban doesn't have one either, but he also has a lot of national championship rings to flash around.
He's 178-25. And that's all he needs to say is someone asked him.
Remember, but here's the thing people forget, Nick Saban, back when he first got the job at Alabama, he made a point to go and visit with the high school coaches throughout the state of Alabama. Yeah. He reached out to all the radio stations. And so he was doing all of those things to put the foundation in place. And then when you start winning national championships, you can focus on the national picture. And then wherever else the crumbs may fall, you can pick those up. But you got to get there first. And Nick Saban back in the day put in the work to get to the position that he's in today.
Yeah. And, one thing we've seen is go back to when Gene Stallings was coaching in Alabama. When he was there, he would sign probably a lot of years, 80% of the kids in the recruiting class were in state or right there in Mississippi. Now, Alabama, Auburn, they've got kids from 15 or 20 different states or more. So it's a national brand that they're selling. But one thing I don't hear a lot of talk with Auburn and Alabama and Georgia is about NIL per se, and other schools and people talk about it that are trying to play catch up, especially Tennessee and Texas A&M. They're really heavy on NIL, but I think kids ultimately that money's an issue. I mean, it's going to be a factor. I think they want to go where they've got the chance to win, and they figure if they go there, the NIL will take care of itself.
Well, you bring up a good point, and see, I think there's enough money to go around, like in the state of Texas, for both Texas and Texas A&M. I think programs like, say, Arkansas, like LSU, they have a huge advantage because think about it. In the state of Alabama, you got Alabama and Auburn. Well, if you're a big corporation in the state, you can't just throw all your money at one of those. You've got to share the load. So that money gets split up. But think about LSU. They don't have to worry about that. Tulane is not going to get a big slice of that pizza, Arkansas, same situation. And so, and Nick Saban said something, because every time he does bring up NIL and all that, people think it's sour grapes. Alabama's not hurting with regards to NIL. Their players are getting nice deals. And as he pointed out, in a world of have and have nots, they're one of the haves, and he understands that. But every time he brings up something that was really addressed more on Monday of last week, is the fact that, say, you're a booster, I'm a booster of the same program, and we really want this particular running back from the state of Georgia to be a part of the program. Well, he may not fit in the needs from the coach's standpoint. He may not be the guy that the coach wants to be a part of the team for the next 3 or 4 years. And so you're going to really get some interesting decisions made where coaches are, in some cases, these boosters are forcing players on coaches that they may not feel like fits into what they are trying to do. It may not fit in as far as chemistry is concerned. And so those are some big issues with NIL moving forward as well.
Yeah. Jimmy?
Yeah, I mean, the NIL at this time last year was just in its infancy, and we just didn't know what to expect. And man, there have been a lot of developments that nobody expected. That's for sure. I mean,
Jimmy, don't you think you've been around football long enough? I mean, now we've got legalized gambling as far as it's like in Tennessee. I can place a bet right now on any baseball game being played today and tonight, for example. This is another issue that's not being addressed, and it kind of correlates with NIL. If I'm a CEO of a company and I've got you signed for the next 3+ years at $400,000, $500,000 a year, these guys when they place bets, they don't want to lose them. And so they're looking for inside information. You're going to see a lot of lines blurred and crossed when you got the NIL, you've got now legalized gambling going on. And in so many ways, it's not being addressed. And just like with NIL, I think everybody was totally reactive. Congress, the government never should have got involved with this. If the schools and the NCAA, and the NCAA are these schools, if they had been proactive, guidelines would have been in place. The government never would have gotten involved.
Yeah, that's a really interesting angle, because that's really the first time I've actually heard the possible conflict between people involved with these gambling services, which have become the rage now. And I mean, you have national personalities like Brent Musburger that have been in on this for 3 or 4 years now, and it's just really grown. And the conflict there off the top would just seem like it would be really disturbing, and the potential danger there of you don't even want to mention these two words, but it ended Tulane basketball for about 10 years, and Boston College basketball was maybe permanently damaged. I don't know if they've really fully recovered, but point shaving, you've got to be careful about things like that.
Well,
and I think
one of the coaches, Coach Pittman got asked about that last week. One of the questions Coach Pittman of Arkansas was asked, said, "Are you aware that your team is 16-5 against the spread over the last 2 years or something?"
Yeah.
And only thing he said was, "Go Hogs." And then it was like, how unprofessional to bring up betting. Well, the ironic part of that is, how many sports stations have endorsement deals with BetMGM or FanDuel or all these? And it's all you see is these advertisements for these sites. And so, like I said, these lines have already been blurred, and they were really trying to get down on someone's case that how unprofessional is if you're covering sports and you're also betting. And it's like, if you're really good at what you do, and I'm not going to be a hypocrite. I do a lot of research. Why invest in the stock market when I can make the kind of money I'm making betting as a part-time thing? It's a hobby. It's fun for me. I'm not betting the house, but do I legally make bets now on college football and the NFL? Absolutely, I do.
Look, you drive by at 4:00 in the morning on Interstate 40 across the river from Memphis and West Memphis, Arkansas, Southland Greyhound Track and Casino. 4:00 in the morning, the parking lot is full. They just built a gorgeous new high-rise hotel, and they're packing them in there. People love to bet. I mean, they take bets on the at halftime. They take bets on who's going to return the kickoff for how many yards. So it's an issue, but that's been going on. Coaches have made a lot of friends and built a lot of strong business relationships over the years by making sure and covering the spread. Remember the great line from Auburn legendary coach Ralph Shug Jordan in 1972 on the Auburn Football Review with South Central Bell. Carl Stevens was talking to Shug, and he said at the famous 17-16 Bama punt game, and Shug said, he said, "Well, it was the only time I've ever seen both fan bases boo. But Auburn kicked a field goal. It was 16-3 Alabama. The Auburn fans booed because they felt like we had given up, and the Alabama fans booed because we blew the line."
Absolutely.
and
here's the thing with me, and I will say this about my betting. Starting in 2008, I put all my picks. I put them on for free on the air, and I put them on Facebook. I've never had a losing season against the spread, and I will pick probably in the neighborhood of 25 to 30 college games. I will pick 80 to 90% of the NFL games week in and week out. The only thing I've always said that if you win money with any of my selections, make a donation to the Humane Society or to some programs that help kids. That's the only thing I've ever asked. But other than that, but now that it's legal, it's all over the place. And so here's the thing: if you are saying that it's unprofessional, And yet at the same time, you're saying, hey, I really am high on this particular game this week. This is what I'm betting on. And you're not betting? Now, who's the hypocrite? So if you're telling your listeners to go to FanDuel and take the bet I'm taking this weekend, and you're not betting and you're telling them that you are, then to me, that's a bigger problem.
Look, think about this, Charlie Hustle. You think, I mean, Jimmy, does that?
I got a story, by the way, about Charlie Hustle. It involves betting, by the way.
But I gotta ask Jimmy this. Jimmy, give me an honest answer. Does the fact that our good friend Johnny Ballpark Franks, a native of Huntsville, the smartest city in Alabama, the fact that he likes to bet, does this preclude his being selected to the Hall of Fame? I say no.
I say no, and I still say no about having banned Pete Rose, because as a player, I don't believe he betted. I think that this happened during his managing career and all that, but at the same time, he never betted against his team, and they allowed Paul Hornung and Alex Karras into the NFL Hall of Fame. They suspended each for a year, but they were allowed in. So, I don't really get that. But yeah, and Johnny, when you talked about the question Sam Pittman got, that's what I was talking about, and how these question and answer periods can get interesting, because you never know what question you're going to get. And Sam, I'm sure, didn't have time to think about it. And that's the only thing he could come up with at the spur of the moment was go Hogs,
That was really Sam. I got a chance to spend some time away from the group too with Sam Pittman. His handler, his PR handler that day was used to work with sports information at Vanderbilt. So, and they've always done a good job. I give thumbs up to the folks at Arkansas as far as in their sports information office, because they get it. Even when Chad Morris was head coach, there's really no strong ties with Arkansas and Nashville, but Chad Morris during August, when as he's preparing his team for an upcoming season, he takes out 15 minutes of his time to do an interview with me on the radio. So, but Sam, so I'm talking to Sam Pittman, and all of a sudden he reaches down and pets my shirt. I have one of these. I'm the kind of guy that I love designer shirts, but I'm not paying designer shirt prices.
That's right.
And so there's a place in Nashville where you can get these nice shirts, usually at 1/3 the cost. So he reaches over and pets my black designer shirt, and he goes, "Nice shirt." He says, "You must be living right." It just caught me off guard. It made me crack up to just out of the blue for him to do that. And that's not the reason why I think Arkansas is going to do well this year. I really think that Sam Pittman has brought a new energy, and I love the way he's got this team focused. I actually have Arkansas finishing 3rd in the West this year, behind Alabama and Texas A&M. But back to Pete Rose, the very first encounter I ever had with Pete Rose, when I was with the Nashville Sounds, the owner would bring in 2 to 4 major league teams as they broke spring training right before a season would start, and they would play exhibition games in Nashville. And so the Reds are in town for 2 days. They play one game on a Saturday and one game on a Sunday. Well, the Saturday he gets there, and it just so happened to be the day that Keeneland was running too. The Kentucky Oaks, 3 weeks before the Kentucky Derby. Me, I don't care. I'm thinking about baseball and my job. So he wanted to be able to watch the game on television. Well, not the game, but the horse race on television. Well, I think it was on cable, but we didn't have cable in his office area or anything. So he really gets mad at me. I mean, we're talking about some, a little bit of a profanity there. Really just irked at me, and for something that I had no control over. So he was that big of a jerk on the Saturday. On the Sunday, I was in the office getting the lineup for the afternoon's game. He apologized, wanting to know if I wanted anything. Did I want an autographed baseball? Could I autograph the program that I designed with him on the cover? I should have asked for his jersey. That was my mistake right there. But I saw both sides of Pete Rose. Back to your point about what he was doing gambling. The biggest thing, it's not necessarily what you do wrong. You mentioned the case of Paul Hornung and Alex Karras. they, admitted to what they did. Pete Rose never did until the very end. And that's the problem, is we see a lot of times it's not necessarily what you do as far as the rule you broke, it's how you address it. And if you're not taking responsibility and being accountable for your actions, Pete Rose never did that for so many years. And that's the problem I have with Pete Rose.
Yeah.
We see it in every clubhouse in baseball, whether it's Major League Baseball, minor leagues, whatever. You see it up there. Do not bet on baseball.
Yeah.
And if you do, then you think you're above the game. And that's where I have the problem.
Yeah, let me say this about Pete Rose. He's one of my favorite players of all time. I wonder when Sotheby's or whatever auction house in New York will have one of the most prized possessions out there that's yet to be auctioned off. And that is the soup bowl used for Pete Rose's bowl cuts. Man, those are some great looking haircuts. $1 million will start the bidding. Jimmy, do you do $1 million? $1 million, $1.25, $1.5 million, $1.75, $2.5 million for the soup bowl used for Pete Rose's famous bowl cuts. Look, I'll tell you, you just got to love a guy that slides to first base, man. I mean, he's cool. Look, Johnny, about to run out of time. We're going to go to Michael Gittens, the War Rapport. You want to stay on? We'd love to have you, but I know you got a tight schedule, but we got another 30-minute segment with Michael Gittens coming up here. These guys focus on Auburn, and they also get into all the schools. They break down video/film like a bunch of scientists, and it's going to be a great segment. But if you got to go, Johnny, let people know how they can follow you. We've also got it at the bottom of the screen. And next time you're on with us, we're on StreamYard now. If you'd like, we can send you that link. It is so easy that even Jimmy, me, Uncle Jed, Jethro Bodine, and my father can tap on that link and come in. Thank you, Buddy Martin, for showing us how to do that. But this has been great, Johnny. You're a true grit journalist and love having you on. And by the way, you had some shirts that Johnny Cash would have been proud to wear.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, those are great stuff. But look, let's take a quick commercial break, and we're going to be right back with Michael Gittens of the War Rapport.
Kitchens and bathrooms make a home, and the design teams at Kitchens Unlimited know how to make kitchens and baths. They know it all because they have seen it all. Kitchens Unlimited has been designing and remodeling the Mid-South's kitchens and baths for over 50 years. Check out their showroom at 3550 Summer Avenue or visit them on the web at kitchensunlimited.net.
If you have a crash, dent or ding, go to G.E. Patterson and B.B. King for Tom Martin's Body Shop.
Come on down to Hewlett & Dunn Boot and Clothing Company, located on Historical Square in Collierville, Tennessee. Hewlett & Dunn is the second largest Filson dealer in the Southeast, stocked with Southern brands you know and trust. And a new inventory arriving all the time. Do yourself or someone you know and love a favor and visit this store. Open Monday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-City exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
As an agricultural producer, no matter where you farm, minimum tillage is a primary concern each and every season. At House Industries in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, we manufacture equipment to help you maximize efficiency when planting and watering a crop. Pieces like the pulverizer, bedder roller, 3-bar do-all, and bed conditioner assist you in optimizing seedbed preparation and ultimately your bottom line. Visit HouseIndustriesInc.com to locate the dealer nearest you.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Brown. Talk sporty to me.
All right, I see Mike Gittens on up there in Washington, D.C. The War Rapport. How are you, man? Great meeting you down there at the days. And I don't know if you heard the last part of that segment we were doing with Johnny Ballpark Franks. We were talking about Pete Rose, and I said, The one item that's yet to go up on the auction block at Sotheby's is the bowl that was used for those great bowl haircuts that Pete Rose used to do. Did you put in a bid for 1.5 or was that 2 million I saw, or was that Jimmy that came in? But I still love Pete Rose. I love Bubba Smith. I love the guys I grew up with. They were just badasses, and I love them. But Michael, you grew up down in Phoenix City. Your dad was in the Army, and man, I know that. I'm the first person on either side of my family not to serve in the military. Brother-in-law, 26 years in the Marine Corps. A lot of family members. I'm proud of them, and thank you for you and your family for what you've done for this country, and also for what you're doing for football fans. Jimmy, we love to talk about football and the technical part of it and breaking down film. I met Michael again up on Radio Row at Media Days. Also watched him ask a lot of questions, and it was nice to see the coaches say, "Hey, man, thanks for asking me a football question." But Michael, let's go. If I twist your arm, will you talk some college football with us?
Yeah, I think I'm down with it for that this morning. A little football on Wednesday.
All right, let's look at Auburn, and then we want to get into some other schools in the SEC. What last year the takeaways are? What are the takeaways in your opinion that kept Auburn from getting past the 6-win barrier? And then let's look ahead to this year, how they can increase the wins and just kind of the state of that program as you see it, because you break down the film and you see the reasons, the how and the why, like very few people can.
Yeah, last year what we saw the remnants of the last coaching staff. This was a system change. This was a system overhaul that Brian Harsin is trying to implement, going from what Gus did to what he's trying to do. So, what does that mean? A lot of fans don't know what that means. The last time Auburn tried to change systems this drastically was 2012. They hired Scott Loeffler. He came in. It was a disaster. It was 3-9. The next year, it was 30 seconds away from a national title because the team was built to do what Gus was trying to do. And if you're going to change to a pro-style attack, you really have to commit to that. It's going to take a couple of years maybe to get your line in the type of strength and conditioning shape that it takes to run a pro-style attack. So last year what we saw the talent that was there through the first 8 games of the season. They started 6-2. There were some struggles in the beginning. TJ Finley had to rescue Auburn against Georgia State. They got the first win in Baton Rouge in 20 years. So 2 decades since they've gotten a win down in Death Valley. They played Georgia tough for 2.5 quarters, but ultimately they were outmanned there. But they took down the top 10 Ole Miss, and they went into Arkansas and put a whoop to them. And by the end of October, Brian Harsin was one of the hottest coaching names in the country. People were like, wow, like what a job he's doing. What we saw over the back half of the schedule was, I think, what you've seen from Auburn for the last, 8 years under Gus is that they, even in the better years, which would have been 2013 and 2017, they get to the end and then it all falls apart. 2013, it took all the way to the national title game before they gave up one of the biggest leads in national title history. 2017, they completely flopped against Georgia in the SEC championship game. That was Gus's second best year on the Plains. And after that, they were about an 8-win team. So what did we see last year? We saw them take steps forward in terms of culture. Rob, Jimmy, there's no other way to say this but just to say it. The team was undisciplined, and it was Gus's mess, so he knew how to manage it. This coach came in and said, we can't do this. Players have to show up on time. They have to give their all in practice. There were talented guys last year that didn't see the field because they didn't give their all in practice. Our best wide receiver, as a matter of fact, never saw the field last year except for one game, and they moved on from him because the message was sent. You can't dog it in practice. You can't give a halfway effort in practice and see the field on Saturdays. And Brian Harsin, I think, would rather suffer those losses than send the message that it's okay for players to do what they want and still play on Saturdays. So the players that left, the exodus of players that left in the portal, it was that culture change that drove a lot of them away. Some of them were told, hey, it's in your best interest to go play somewhere else next year. And there are two sides to this, right? Brian Harsin was a polarizing hire, right? There's a lot of people who didn't want him. And, he came in and he did this thing his way in year one. I thought we saw the potential over the first half of the season, and over the back half of the season, you saw the work that's still left to be done. Over the back half of the season, with the how the team performed, you saw why we made coaching change, right? This Auburn has not been able to finish. That's not something new. It just looked a little worse because it's year one of a coaching change. But if you think about previous years, absent of 2017 and 2013, it's been the same story. It's been the exact same story. So changing that narrative and changing that culture, I think it takes time. It's a process. Probably the most underrated coach on any football team is a strength and conditioning coach.
Yeah.
This is something different. The linemen, what we saw last year is we saw our run game stall a lot, and they weren't physically strong enough to move people the way you need to do in the run game because Gus liked his linemen built smaller and faster. The run game was predicated on misdirection to some extent. And Harsin wants to play big boy football. And to play big boy football, you just got to man up and move somebody. It's hard to gain that kind of strength in one offseason. And you saw it. You saw it last year. This year, guys, we're interviewing players every week. And they're talking about how they're setting records in the weight room. Like, we're as strong as we've ever been. The culture is good. The mindset is there. And I think that a lot of people overlooking the potential of this team, looking at what went wrong. But the truth is there were some things that went right last year for them. They just got to learn how to finish.
Yeah. And I tell you what, before we go to Jimmy, I talked to Stuart Stat Tiger Carter yesterday off the air, and we were just talking, and something that a mutual friend of ours, Mark Green, who passed away about 12 years ago, really knew football, probably the original blogger for Auburn. He used to say, it's not about the matchups. It's about how you match up on game day. That's right. Everything. So great takeaway, Michael. Jimmy, jump on in this conversation with Michael Gittens of the War Rapport. And you'll see at the bottom of the screen, everybody that we have on here, our guests, their Twitter information and everything. We are blessed to have folks like Michael Gittens, previously Johnny Ballpark Franks, and we're here to serve. Jimmy?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting to remember that Auburn was a 6-2 team going into College Station last year, and I felt it just so happened that A&M, along with their performance against Alabama, had their best game against Auburn. They were just really sharp. They took control of the game from the very beginning and just never let Auburn breathe. And so I just took that game as just, one of those instances in which, A&M was just on top of their game. They executed superbly in every phase of the game, and Auburn just seemed to be a step behind. And so you chalk that one up as an L against a very tough SEC West team on the road. But I think that the backbreaker, though, was the Mississippi State game when you have the 28-3 lead and you give up 40 in a row. I mean, that's just devastating from, a psychological standpoint. And then, South Carolina, you go to Como and you get a double-digit lead and you can't hold it. And the Gamecocks win going away. But then anytime Bama comes to Jordan Hare, all that stuff goes away. I mean, they were ready to play. They should have won the game. Bama came in flat, but they just had a great quarterback that was able to avoid, in addition to being sacked 7 times anyway, his superb athletic ability and quickness really avoided about 7 other sacks, and he made some huge plays, obviously, on the 98-yard drive, and they pulled out the miracle victory. But Auburn in that game, to me, really kind of set the blueprint on how you play defense against Alabama, and that's go with a blitz-heavy scheme, and especially the right tackle had all kinds of issues trying to, block the speed rush. And I think every team that Alabama faces going forward is going to see that, because you saw the very next week against Georgia, they stayed with their base scheme defensively, didn't record a sack on Bryce Young, and then in the national championship game, they took Auburn's blueprint and went with that blitz-heavy scheme, and Bryce was running for his life the whole game. So I think Auburn really showed some really bright points in that Alabama game when they're focused, ready to play, that they can really be a factor. But I think the year under Brian Harsin, getting adjusted to his system was really important for the players that came back. But offensively, I think there's no question Bo Nix is not a progressions quarterback.
No.
He's not going to drop back and look for his second, third, and fourth options. And that's why I really think that Calzada and Finley will be two guys, if they get some game experience in this Harsin scheme, that they can really show progress as quarterbacks. But at the same time, my one concern at Auburn is at the wide receiver position, because we know their tight ends and Schenker especially had a really good year. But to really be effective offensively, you have to stretch the field vertically in your passing game. How do you feel about their receivers coming into this season?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that question. I think that is a bone of contention for a lot of fans is that, receiver play seemed like it was lacking. Now, I have a different perspective on this. You mentioned Bo Nix not being a progressions quarterback. It is hard as a receiver. That's the one position on the field where you probably have the least control of the outcome of a play, because you can't give the quarterback enough more time to throw it to you. You can't throw the ball to yourself.
That's fair.
And when you have a quarterback like Bo who showed progress last year under Harsin, but the truth is that some of the better receivers that we've had over the last 3 years, Seth Williams and Anthony Schwartz, go back and read their draft profiles. The experts, the scouts were saying, hey, these guys, their production suffered from a lot of inaccurate throws from the quarterback position. So ball placement and accuracy is going to be something I think that will help Auburn's receiver core. If you go back and you look at the Georgia game last year, there were what seemed like a lot of drops in that game. But the truth was, on what looked like routine throws to the flat, they were inaccurate passes. The quarterback was making those catches harder than they had to be. And when you have an inexperienced wide receiver core, right, the most senior guy on the field, when he's the quarterback, he's the one that's got to be dialed in. I did not think it was fair that, the receivers got thrown under the bus, because technically the ball got there, but it was out of position. And you expend all your energy just trying to make the catch. So forget a play after the catch. You threw an inaccurate ball. Look at last year. Bama, Jimmy, I want to go back to what you said about the Auburn setting the blueprint last year on how to attack Bama. I said it early in the season. My associate B. Will that's on our show, he didn't want to believe me early in the season, but I told him, I said, that offensive line is gettable. This might be the worst Bama offensive line I've seen in a decade. And it proved true. A&M got to Bryce Young 5 times in that game. They sacked him 5 times. They went after him. I think Auburn saw that tape. We went after him even more. They were gettable. That was a beatable offensive line last year. And I think it highlights how special Bryce Young's Heisman was, winning a Heisman behind a line that was dead last in the SEC in pass protection. They gave up 37% pressure rate. Bama's line gave up on them. To contrast, Bo Nix was only under pressure 26% of his dropbacks. So 11% more pressure in the SEC against marquee talent. Man, he did a phenomenal job. Even in the Iron Bowl, listen, it was a rough game for him, but when it counted, he came through. And what Auburn needs is they need a quarterback that makes the people around him better. Now, Calzada, he's a senior guy. And when I say a senior guy, I mean he's a multi-year guy. He's been in college. He played a whole season, and he's one of a few guys on this offense that has played, started a whole season. We don't have that in Robbie Ashford. I think he's supremely talented, but there's a feeling maybe that he's not quite ready to take the reins. And TJ Finley got a few games at LSU his freshman year before he got thrown into the fire. And then same thing at Auburn last year. He didn't get a spring with the team. He came in from the portal after the summer, and Bo got a lot of the first team reps. So I just don't think he was ready for the moment when it was time. Now there are no excuses, right? Now I said it was a system change, but there's talent in that wide receiver room. There's talent, and I think that the symbiotic nature between the quarterback and the wide receivers is something that people need to pay attention to. If Calzada is accurate, people are going to say this year, man, where did these receivers come from? They got a kid out of the portal from LSU, Coy Moore. We interviewed him. Supremely talented kid. Yeah. Man, let me tell you, Harsin brought him up at media days. His teammates have described him as a guy who never misses. He never misses. Catch a ball over the middle, and he's a home run threat every time he touches the ball. Now, he left LSU, and he had his reasons for leaving LSU that I won't repeat. But you're talking about a program that has produced receivers at a very, very good rate over the last few years, man. Justin Jefferson, the Jamar Chases, the Odell Beckhams, all those guys that have come out of that program, over the last, 7 or 8 years. It's not unheard of that a guy who didn't get on the field a whole lot at LSU could come in and be a star receiver at Auburn. I would counter Jamison Williams was Bama's best receiver. Couldn't see the field at Ohio State. Came in and dominated at Bama. So, the one thing, but I thought that domination was possible because Mac Jones, go back and read his draft profile, elite ball placement. Doesn't have the strongest arm. He can make most of the throws on the field, but the truth was Devontae Smith won the Heisman because he had a quarterback that always put the ball in the right position for him to make a play. Yeah. And then his athleticism can take over after that. And, wide receiver wins the Heisman. So Auburn doesn't need a Heisman at quarterback to win 8 games this year. They don't need that, right? They need a guy who can go out there and not lay an egg like a Georgia State or a South Carolina or a Texas A&M where we didn't score an offensive touchdown. And the only touchdown that was scored in the game, the quarterback gave it to them, fumbling the ball on a scoop and score, right? Calzada was on the other side of that coin. Again, no offensive touchdown scored, but guys, he made the throws down the field, stretching the field like you're talking about, Jimmy. He made just enough plays to get them in position for them to win the game. I think if he takes the jump this year, Auburn has a chance to scare some people.
Hey, Michael, here's another. I'm going to throw some numbers at you. Again, and talking with Stat Tiger yesterday, we talking, if Zach Calzada, if you look at him, Auburn with him at quarterback, let's say they get an average 3 or 4 more first downs per game than they did last year. That probably translates to another 6 or 7 points a game.
2 wins. Yep. Think
about at the end of last year, the Houston game, the Alabama game, the South Carolina game. You look at Auburn, they're 9-4 or they're 10-3. That narrative is markedly different going into the season. Now, you get Auburn this year. They start off 5-0. It's going to change everything. And I also think it changes the narrative in recruiting because a lot of these kids, Phoenix City Central, Patrick Nix is over there coaching. They are loaded. We all know that. I mean, I remember a couple of years ago, they identified over 30 Division I prospects on that field, on that team at Phoenix City Central for the Red Devils. Now, you look, Zach Calzada, he seems like he's the man at quarterback. Looks like he's healthy. He's recovering from his surgery. I believe Tank Bigsby, Jarquez Hunter, I think the guy that doesn't, he's a walk-on. I think he's on scholarship now. Sean Jackson out of Hewitt-Trussville. That's a guy that is a human wrecking ball, the old name given to Trey Blackman, the linebacker out of LaGrange, Georgia, came in the number 1 linebacker in the country back in 05 or 06. I think Auburn is very close to being last year 9-4 or 10-3. Their roster, if I'm not mistaken, if you look at the Blue Chip Index, which is a cycle every 4 years, the number of 4 and 5 stars in your roster that you have, Auburn's probably the 9th most talented roster in the country.
Yep.
But as you alluded to earlier, and so did Jimmy, it's certainly not the 9th most well-developed. But it takes about 15, 18 months to transform your body physically. The strength and conditioning program that Auburn had, especially with the offensive linemen, was what it has been holding Auburn back for years.
Right.
And that's changed. And I don't think people understand it, and they're sleeping on Auburn. And I'm not saying that as an Auburn grad in the interest of full disclosure. I'm harder on Auburn than I am any other school, just like I would be my own. And I am on my 4 kids. I expect greatness out of them, but you've really broken it down. Now, impact plays, 15 or more yards. What about Jontavius Johnson at receiver? Stat Tiger thinks he might be the breakout player on the offense that people really aren't talking about. And he's not that big, but every other play with him is an impact play.
Honestly, from the word that we're hearing out of camp, I don't think it will be him. I think you need to keep an eye on Malcolm Johnson, number 16. You need to look out for Shedrick Jackson. He's the senior most receiver on that team. I think that bringing in Coy Moore and the other guy from Miami, Dzalen Worsham, frees Shedrick for them to use him where he's more effective. I don't think he was effective on the outside last year. That's not his game, but he's a tough guy that can go over the middle and get a catch. And the teammates have been raving about Tavares Dawson. He's a guy that we're supposed to look out for. They've got a lot of speed in that receiver room this year. They've got a lot of sub-4 5 guys. And they've got a couple guys that are in the 4.3s that can really turn the Jets on. So you talked about stretching the ball down the field. Guys, Calzada last year was about 42% on throws of 20 yards or more. And that's important because if you look at the top half of the SEC, most of the quarterbacks that, were in the top half and their team saw success, they were plus 40% throwing the ball down the field. The only anomaly was Bryce Young, and it was only because he threw the ball down the field about 25 times more than the guy in second, right? So to quantify that, Calzada was 16 of 38 on yards of 20 plus or more. Bryce Young was like 28 of 74. I mean, he threw it down the field quite a bit. The guy in second only threw it 55 times down the field. So those are low percentage throws. Accuracy is important. And then having receivers that bail you out every once in a while is important as well. But, I put more of that on the quarterback, putting the ball in a position where a receiver has a chance to make a play when you're throwing the ball deep. Those plays keep your defense honest because the blueprint to beat Auburn last year was load up the box to stop Tank and make Bo Nix beat you. That was it. And the games where teams couldn't do that, Arkansas, first half of Ole Miss, it looked great. LSU was an outlier. A lot was made of Backyard Bo running around, throwing the ball backwards behind his head, under his legs, right? But that performance did not give me any confidence that they would stand a chance against Georgia the next week. So if you come in and you have a guy like Calzada or Finley or whoever's playing quarterback, and they can stretch the field a little bit so that defenses cannot load the box. I think Arkansas was the blueprint offensively last year. Bo hit like 2 or 3 deep balls, and they had to respect it. And then we ran Arkansas off the field in their home stadium. So, that's going to be the key is they show glimpses of it. Last year, we saw it. It's on tape. That was Arkansas's best team in the last 10 years. They beat them soundly. Ole Miss, top 10. They beat them soundly. They have that in them. So I think marginal improvement at that position could yield big improvement for Auburn's offense in 2022.
Yeah, and look, we're about out of time, and Jimmy, we got time for one more question, but make it quick. Jimmy.
In that Arkansas game, it didn't. I couldn't hear you, Rob.
Yeah, just got time for one more question.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
I was just going to mention in that Arkansas game, it didn't hurt that Jalen Catalon, who I think is the best safety in college football, didn't play in the game. And I'm telling you that guy is a first-round player if you've ever seen one. But that's a sign of a good team. If you can take advantage of a situation where your opponent is missing a couple of key players, and they exploited that very well. And I think with Calzada too, if he can quickly pick up this offense, because of his injury, he wasn't able to work really live at all in the spring. I think it's going to be really important for him to be ready to go from day one and be able to get ready for that first scrimmage, and then get better in the second scrimmage, so that they can feel that he's ready to go for that season opener.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, Auburn starts the season with 5 straight home games, right? That is your time to establish your identity. You have to establish the type of football that you're going to want to play. You got 2 cupcakes and then Penn State, right? And I think that, some working out some kinks game 1 is okay. But by game 2, they need to look like a well-oiled machine. They need to dominate that game. And then going into Penn State, game that they lost by 1 score last year. Now it's in your house, right? They lost a lot. They lost NFL talent. They lost one of their great running backs, Noah Cain, to LSU. Jahan Dotson went in the draft. Penn State is gettable. Now, and you start the season 3-0. You have Missouri, which is kind of like this year's South Carolina. They're not a great team, but you can't lose that game. And suddenly the outlook for this team is different. I mean, Vegas set the over-under at 5.5 games initially coming out the gate. I hammered the over, guys. I dropped the whole bag on the over. I was like 5.5. Give me 6. I think that they get 6 easily. Show some fight, show competitiveness against Georgia. Beat LSU for what will be a 3rd year straight now. If they can get this will be 3 years straight. They beat LSU, and then just don't crumble over the back half of the schedule. And I think 8 wins is possible. I think that recruits. I asked Harsin at media days, what's the message to recruits watching Auburn? Why choose Auburn at this point? He said, the message is watch what we put on the field this year, and, watch what we're able to do. The missing piece is going to be you, right? Like, we may not be there yet, but if we have you, we'll get there. And I think recruits should watch out for that.
Yeah, look, we're out of time. Let me say this. Go back and look how that Auburn team rallied around Coach Tuberville in 2004. Now, there was no talent on that team, but from people, boots on the ground on campus, this team has done something similar. If you stayed behind, you and I talked about this, Michael, at Media Days. If you stayed behind at Auburn, you didn't hit the portal, that means that you bought in. And I wouldn't want to go against what guys like Tank Bigsby and Derek Hall and Colby Wooden and all the leaders of that team are all about. Michael, great segment. We got to get you back on here again really soon. Tell people how they can follow you and subscribe to your service. And great questions, Jimmy.
Thanks, guys, for having me. We're the War Rapport on YouTube. Go over to YouTube, search the War Rapport, hit subscribe. We have what we call our patron members. So if you join as a member during the season, every Monday we break down the film from the game on Saturday. So it's every single play. Sometimes we have the all 22 and we go through it and we show fans what happened, right, in the aftermath of the game. We also have special interview content. We've had Coach Harsin on. Bruce Pearl joined us while we were at Media Days. So we got a lot of great content at the War Rapport. Please hit subscribe. We're thankful for every listen.
Hey, look, great stuff as always. And hey, look, everybody, thanks so much. Great show. Have a great day. Most often we see the face of Christ in the least among us. Go out and help somebody with the expectation to get nothing in return. Sidelines, back with you tomorrow. Go to 680thefan.com, the podcast park in Atlanta. And remember, right after this show, go over there with our good friends Dan Mathews and Chuck Oliver. Southern Sports Today. They are on 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Monday through Friday, talking nothing but college football. God bless America, folks. We are out of here.